Can you tell me a little bit about, we talked about individual identity theft and the impact that would have for a person trying to restore that, restore their identity, restore their reputation. How can that impact the company that they work for? What kind of implications do employers need to be aware of when an employee of theirs suffers a personal breach?
Well, you have to realize that being a crime victim is traumatic. And I know that sometimes people don't liken financial crimes to as a traumatic experience. They think, well, it's not a violent crime, or you're physically okay. But the reality is it is a traumatic experience. People do suffer emotionally from the effects of the crime. Some of them suffer physically, and there are a lot of downstream effects, these long-term effects that can pop up again. So, think about whenever someone has had a traumatic experience in the workplace, they may have to take time off work. So any time that they're taking off work, that's an issue of productivity for the company. It's an issue for the rest of their coworkers, who are generally going to have to somehow absorb that workload for a temporary period. And even if they aren't taking a significant amount of time away from the office, when they are there, they're probably not at their best self. They're not performing at their highest or their best, because they are going through those emotional issues. I think every single person can relate to being through an experience that has just really sidelined them. It doesn't have to be a crime, but a health issue, problems with family members, a divorce, your kids having problems in schools. We get distracted, we can't focus, we can't sleep, we're not eating right. That is absolutely going to affect our performance at work. And so the more resources that we can put into place for folks who are dealing with this issue, not just from the practical remediation standpoint, but also for all of these other issues, giving them some sense of mind, making them some peace of mind, making them feel like they have a safety net and some support, that actually, I can make that business case all day long, that you do need to care about this issue for your employees. You do need to make sure that you understand that this could be an issue. So you should be training them and helping to protect your own data internally, and encouraging other businesses and platforms to do so as well. Because again, we're all in this together, and it affects all of us, not just the one person.
Employers, I think employers now know better than ever that they really do need to focus on the well-being of their employees, and that includes physical and emotional and fiscal, and of course cyber well-being as well. We talk a lot about employee stress and the impact that has on employee performance and the company as a whole. Life is stressful. People are not going to avoid stress. There's always going to be those types of personal things that your employees are having to manage. But can you talk a little bit about what employers can do to help mitigate stress in the areas that they can control, things like cybersecurity, financial wellness, those types of things?
Well, I think right now it's really important to understand that with your remote workforce, just staying connected will help reduce some of that stress. Of course, if your employees have a sense that you have policies and processes in place to help mitigate or reduce that risk, and they know that you care, and frankly that you'll be understanding and take care of them, that can be a stress reliever in and of itself. We conduct the aftermath every year, where we survey the victims that we've helped in a previous year, and really try to get a big picture of how they were feeling and what some of those stressors were. And when they talk about support of family, support of their spouse, support of their community, we also ask about, did your employer support you, or did they feel like you were overreacting? So there are some of those little things, just telling them, we understand that this is really hard for you. How can we support you and reduce that stress level? I also think right now, employers can help employees stay connected. Some employers have been saying, hey, you can use some of these work-related devices in order to stay connected to your family and friends. We really have to be paying attention to all of those devices and all of those platforms, because you may be using different platforms for, you know, different levels of engagement. I have one friend who she's got 3 girls, one in high school, one in junior high, one in elementary school. The 2 in junior high and high school have, I think, 7 different teachers who are all using different platforms to engage with the students. That is really stressful. So I would also recommend that companies, if you're going to go to this and you're doing more remote work, try to unify some of those processes, make it more uniform, and make sure that you have the policies and the training that they need to understand how all of these things work, how they're supposed to work, what we're doing. And I think that goes a long way. That just goes a long way.
Can you talk a little bit about, from an employer perspective, what are some of the benefits of, you know, really focusing on this effort to keep your employees safe, to help them understand what they can be doing to keep themselves and their families safe, even on personal time? Can you talk a little bit about why an employer should really care about that kind of thing?
And when you think about, you know, employees that feel secure in their positions and feel safe and taken care of, their productivity is higher. And from a cybersecurity and a best cyber practice, I do need to mention that there is a percentage of data breaches that come from employee malfeasance. So employees scorned who have access to a lot of data and information, and feel like they are being mistreated, it in some ways almost legitimizes the abusing that data and getting back, being retaliatory to an employer. So of course, there are always going to be that very small segment of the population that no matter what you do, you can't avoid that they may try to retaliate or misuse that data. But for the folks that just feel wronged and not supported, you can address that very easily by treating them well and supporting them and making sure that they have access to benefits and things that will support them, you know, throughout the year, but especially in times of crisis. And being a victim of a financial crime or identity theft would be considered a time of crisis. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, all of these practices, taking care of your employees, making sure they understand the policies and processes, making sure they're practicing good cyber hygiene, this all benefits the company because they don't have to go back and fix it. Just circling back to what we talked about before, that it takes a lot less time to invest in these efforts, in the risk minimization efforts, than it does to remediate an identity theft or an identity crime case. Same principle applies for an employer. It actually takes a lot less time, money, and effort to invest at the beginning in these types of support programs and policies and infrastructure that support your employees than it does to fix something that's gone wrong.